Hello everyone, my name is Masha and today I'm going to teach you how to make patterns inside shaped bracelets. So this tutorial really isn't for beginners. Going into this tutorial, I do expect that you've made bracelets before, you're experienced with patterns and the triangle ends technique. If you are a beginner, I have a ton of beginner-friendly videos, and I'll link them in the description so you can watch them and get up to speed. But that being said, let's get into the video. So we're getting into the festive season, and I wanted to do something really cute to mark that. And last year I did a knot with me for this bracelet. It was one of the first knot with me videos that I did, and it was even one of the first videos that I did. And so this bracelet has become very special to me. So I decided I'm going to recreate it for this tutorial. A while ago I also did a tutorial on this bracelet, which is the circle bracelet. And what we're going to be doing today is pretty much the same technique that was used to create this bracelet. And even more so, this is also very similar to the triangle ends technique, which I used to start and finish my bracelets. So videos on both the circle bracelet and the triangle ends technique will be linked in case you need more information, and if you didn't quite understand something, hopefully those will be able to clear it up for you. But I will be showing everything today as well. So the technique that I'm going to be showing you today is called the shaped bracelet technique. And we did use it here when we did this circle bracelet. But in the video that I did for that, I didn't really go into detail explaining how to do the inside, if you want to do it as a pattern. I only showed you how to do these diamond patterns and changing the colors between each circle. But you can also totally use this technique with patterns as well. So check out this bracelet, for example. I haven't finished knotting it yet, but you can still see the technique is used here. So each iteration of the design is contained within its own sort of diamond or circle. The original pattern for this didn't look like this, it looked like a normal pattern and will be linked down in the description. But I modified the pattern to make it into a shaped pattern. But before we get into modifying patterns, let's take a look at a pattern that is already in the shape that we need. And of course I'm talking about this pattern. If you take a look at the pattern, you can see that it's already in the shape of a diamond. You don't need to alter the pattern in any way, you can just use what is there on the pattern to create a shaped bracelet. Or if you decide not to do that, you don't have to even do anything with the edges, and then the edges just become frayed like this with just string sticking out. So there are different ways that you can do patterns like this. But since we're going into shaped bracelets, I'll be showing you how to do that. So I've cut the string that I need for this pattern. I've got 7 blue strings and I've got 7 of this sparkly yarn, which is the Alitsesal Simli. So we're not doing a loop here, we're just gonna do a shaped start. I'm gonna leave about this much. I don't think I'm gonna need any more for the ties, and I'm gonna pin down my string at this point so that when I've actually started making the bracelet, I can then go back and do the ties later. So I've taped my string down to the table and I've got the blue strings on one side and the white strings on the other side. And what we're going to do now is essentially the triangle end technique. As I said, I've done videos on them before, so if you want more information, go check those out. But basically what you do is you look at your pattern and you identify what strings you need where. On this pattern, it's extremely easy because you've got all of the blue strings on one side and all of the white strings on the other side. So it really doesn't matter in which order you take them out because they're literally the same strings on different sides. So I'm going to start with the blue side. I'm going to take one of the blue strings and I'm going to do a forward knot, bringing the string out into the center. Then you take another string from the bunch, you do another knot, but you exclude the string that you've already taken out, so that one isn't in the bunch anymore. You make a knot just on the ones inside the bunch. And then you take another string out and you do the same thing, a knot on the entire strand, excluding the strings that you've already taken out, and you do that for every string until you run out of strings. So there you go, you can see the shape start coming along and all of your strings are now separated and brought into the center. You do the exact same thing on the other side, and once again, since everything is the same color, it doesn't matter which order you take them out in, you just have to bring each string out. So take a string from the bunch, do a backward knot onto the strand. Then take another one and do a backward knot onto the strand as well, but exclude the string that you've already taken out, and you do this until you run out of strings. So there you go, you've done the shaped start, you've got it on the left and on the right. Now all you need to do is connect them. So at this point I need to closely follow the pattern since we are doing a pattern this time. And in my pattern I can see that this first blue string at the top does an entire row of knots onto the white strings. So I'm going to start by doing that. Grabbing my strings and doing a row of forward knots onto each of these white strings, just as my pattern suggests. And if you're really confused and you don't know how to read patterns, I also have a separate tutorial on that for beginners. And there you go, I've already done an entire row of my pattern. Realistically, you only needed to do one knot to connect the two halves and then just go into your pattern however you like. But for me, it was easier to just do one row since I needed to do that anyway. So from this point, you just go into actually making the pattern. And I personally think that using segment knotting is the best way to do it because it's just quicker. But you can also do this row by row if you really want to. The fact that it's a diamond doesn't really change much. You just don't do the knots that aren't indicated. So if you're following the pattern row by row, and the first row you'd do one knot, on the second row you'd make 2 knots, then 3 knots, 4 knots, and so on. But if you're doing segment knotting, it doesn't really matter. And once again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I have a very in-depth tutorial separately, which is why I'm not really going into detail here. So I'm just gonna knot my pattern for the inside of the diamond, and then once I finish that, I'll get back to you and explain how to do the end. So there you go, I've just finished doing the inside of the pattern and it's a cute little snowflake. So now I'm ready to close off this circle and start the second one. And again, what we're going to be doing here is exactly the same as the triangle ends technique. Focusing on the right side first, we're going to take the outermost pair of string and do a forward knot. We're then going to take the next string and do a forward knot on both of these strings at the same time. Then we're going to grab the next string and do a forward knot on all 3 of these at the same time. Then the 4th one, doing a knot on the entire bunch again. And so on until we reach the end. And same on the left side, we take the outermost pair of string, do a backward knot. Take the next one, do a backward knot on the bunch, and so on, taking out one string, doing a backward knot on the bunch until we reach the end. And there we go, our circle is complete. We are now ready to start the second circle, and the second circle is going to be started exactly the same way we started the first circle. So looking at our pattern, thankfully it's very easy for this one. We have all the strings of one color on the left and the other color on the right. You literally do exactly the same thing, taking out one string, doing a forward knot onto the entire bunch. Then the next string, doing a forward knot on the bunch, excluding the string that we just took out. And so on until you reach the end, and then the same thing on the right, then do the pattern in the middle and then close off the strings just like I showed you just now. And that's it, you repeat that process over and over and over until you have a bunch of little circles and the bracelet is the length that you need. And there you go, the bracelet is done. And as you can see, it is very similar to the circle bracelet that I did previously, but you can also do this for patterns that aren't shaped as a diamond originally. Like this pattern, for example. This one wasn't originally a diamond, but I altered it to be one. So let's talk some more about that. So very recently I did a video that was an extension on the triangle ends video that explained more about how you can cut the pattern at different points to create different shapes in the pattern. Because of this, I'll go quite briefly here. If you want more detail, you can check that video out. But let's take a look at this pattern, for example, the one I was talking about. This pattern very clearly consists of a lot of different diamonds. So what I did is I just chose one of those diamonds and decided to go from there. We have a white outline in the pattern, so I cut my bracelet directly on that white outline to create the shape. So essentially, it really is just a triangle end. You choose how you want to cut the bracelet. This is the way that I chose. And then you very carefully identify which strings are going into which positions. So in my case, the pattern is symmetrical. So it's going to be the same on both the left and on the right side. And it starts with a white string, then goes into yellow, orange, red, light blue, middle blue, dark blue, then white, and the rest are black. So that would be the order in which you bring out your strings into the center of the bracelet by doing backward forward knots on the left and forward backward knots on the right. So same as we did previously, you take one string, you do a knot on the bunch, you take it out. The first string for me here would be the white string. And then you would go into each of the following strings, so the yellow, orange, and so on. After you bring out all of the strings, you do the pattern that is in the middle. And again, that can be either row by row, starting with one knot, then two, then three per row, etc. Or you can go into segment knotting, which is what I prefer. Once you've completed the pattern that is in the center, you want to go ahead and close off the circle. And again, since I wanted to follow the shape of the pattern, I wanted to follow the white outline, I closed my bracelet off with the white outline as well. When you're closing off the circle, you don't have to pay that much attention to the pattern, since your strings are already in the order that they need to be. You just need to go from the edges into the center by doing forward knots on the right and backward knots on the left, exactly the same as to how I showed you in the previous example. But let's have a look at a different pattern. Check out this pattern, for example. This technique works best when you have a very clear sort of diamond or circle shape within the pattern itself. Here we can very obviously see that with the outline. The white outline cuts a clear diamond within the pattern. So exactly the same how we did it in the previous example and the example before that, we would cut the bracelet where the diamond starts, arrange our strings according to the pattern, which in this case, again, it's symmetrical, and it goes from white to purple, and then all the way through all the colors of the rainbow, then to white again. You would arrange those strings by doing backward forward knots on the left side, forward backward knots on the right side, then you would do the pattern in the middle, and then close off the circle exactly how we did before. But what if you have a pattern that doesn't really have a diamond shape, which is realistically most patterns? Take a look at this pattern, for example. Say you like a part of this pattern, for example the bit with the white circle in the middle, and you want that to be inside of your shaped bracelet. You can just cut that portion of the bracelet out. Now this is a little bit more advanced, so I wouldn't recommend this if you're a beginner, but let's take a look at this pattern. We can cut around the circle. We need the edges of our shaped bracelet to come out at row 10, since that is where the white circle is at its widest point. So going up from row 10, drawing two diagonal lines, we end up at row 2. So that is where we'd cut to start the shaped bracelet. And then to finish, I would go as well from row 10, and cutting down, I would end up at row 18. That is where I would finish the pattern. So again, you would cut your bracelet, do the triangle end to start, fill in the middle of the bracelet following the pattern, and then just close off the shaped circle. So like that, if you have a pattern that you don't exactly want to follow the entirety of, but bits of it you want to put in a shaped bracelet, you find the piece that you want to be in the center and then just cut around that. But there are also examples, say like this one, where maybe you don't necessarily want it to be an exact circle, you just want it to be a little bit of a shaped bracelet. A little bit more complicated, but still the same sort of technique. Now, again, if you've seen my video on the extended triangle ends, I talked a lot about how you can cut your bracelet literally wherever you want. So if you want a ton more examples on that, I really recommend you check that out. But basically, you don't actually have to cut from the middle, you don't have to cut in a symmetrical way, you can cut wherever you want in the pattern. Here, however, the pattern is kind of symmetrical still, even though I don't want to cut directly a diamond, how I did in the previous examples, it's still kind of symmetrical. So, what I'm talking about is, to start the bracelet, I would still probably do the normal triangle. I want to cut around the outline. So I would start by cutting here For the outline of the shape, I would bring out all of my strings in the triangle end. I would do this pattern until row 11, where the outline starts going in again, and I would cut again until row 14. And at this point, I would take these strings and I would start closing off the circle up until the white knot of row 14, at which point the bracelet goes back out again until row 17, and at that point I would again do an outward triangle end, bringing the strings back out again. You see what I'm doing here? So I'm bringing the strings in from row 11 to row 14 by starting to close off the circle, similarly to how we did in the previous examples where we just did diamond shapes. But then once the string goes back out again, following the shape of the pattern, I would start bringing the strings back out again like we did in the triangle end. And in this case, it's the white, black, black, black on both sides, since they're symmetrical. Then again, from row 17 to row 20, it goes back in, so I would start closing off the triangle, and then it goes back out from row 20 to row 23. I would bring all the strings back out again, all the while I'm still filling in all the knots in between. And then from row 23, since it cycles back to the top, all the way to row 3, we just have the white outline going in. So that at that point I would completely and fully close off the triangle and start again. So as I said, this one is a little bit more complex. I definitely wouldn't recommend starting with that, but what I'm trying to demonstrate here is you don't actually have to do it in a diamond shape. It can be any sort of shape you like. I personally prefer following an outline. I think that's more aesthetic, but again, if you've watched my extended tutorial on triangle ends, you know that you can literally cut wherever. It does not matter. So hopefully that helped clear up a bit how you can cut your patterns, how you can put different designs into the circle, how you can do different shapes, not just circles. And I'm excited to see all of you guys to start tagging me on Instagram with all the super creations that you make. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I left some links in the description to patterns that I think would work well with this technique, so feel free to check those out and make those if you want to. I want to give a special shout out to my patrons, and especially my top supporters, who are Jane, Zoe, Tia, and Izzy. Thank you guys very much for your support. It helps me run this channel. If you also want to become a patron, there is a link in the description where you can sign up. Other than that, I post videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and sometimes bonus videos as well, so keep your eyes out for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye!